equality, human dignity, freedom of movement and residence, education, security and life. These are just some of the rights enshrined in the South African Bill of Rights. Amalungelo afumanekayo kwi-constitution yethu. Iyanconywa ke kwilizwe nakwizwekazi ngakumbi. Namhlanje siqokelelene ke to commemorate Human Rights Day amidst a pandemic that has taken the lives of too many South Africans. Isihloko sethu sanamhlanje, the year of Charlotte Maxeke, promoting human rights in the age of COVID-19. Kufanelekile ke into yokubana xa sidibana kulo nyaka, particularly on this day, to celebrate the life of human rights activist nomama wethu Charlotte Maxeke. She fought fearlessly against patriarchy, the right to human dignity, nangakumbi, that all-important access to education. Namhlanje, we shine a light on some of the human rights that Umama Charlotte and her contemporaries fought for. Sibone into yokubana singathi siyawaphila la malungelo singabemi balapha eMzantsi. Sinethemba into yokubana sizakuxhobisa ngolwazi ke namhlanje, and of course the responsibilities that come with these rights. Ubulisile kanjalo ke uMablangwe, and as a lover of all humans, it is my absolute honor to take you on South Africa's human rights journey. Hashtag Human Rights Day 2021, hashtag Year of Charlotte Maxeke.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for justice, peace, and justice on earth. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and toil together to give the best we have to Africa. The cradle of mankind and fount of culture, the pride and hope and break of dawn. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Così si chiede Africa, ma lo pagani su Pondalwaia, Israeli mitana Sovietu. Così si chiede Latina, Lusa Polwaia,
Matikizela Mandela, Joe Slovo,
Oliver Tambo, Hector Peterson, Walter Sisulu,
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela,
Helen Joseph, Solomon Mahlangu, Lillian Goyi, and Charlotte Maxeke.
Good morning, fellow South Africans. My name is Lubabalo Oscar Mabuyane, the Premier of the Eastern Cape Province. Our province is honored to host you in this year's edition of Human Rights Day commemorations under the very difficult conditions of COVID-19. We view this public holiday as a reminder of the road we have traversed from a colonial and apartheid past where the Black masses were stripped of their birthrights and civil liberties. The most painful right that was stripped from our people was the dispossession of their land. In our province, this led to 9 wars of resistance, which were fought over a period of 100 years, where the blood of our forebears were spilled by settlers. This forced the 18th century generation to wage a relentless, peaceful struggle to defeat both colonialism and the apartheid system. Among our heroes and heroines in that generation was Ma'am Charlotte Maxeke, a woman of fortitude who pioneered the fight against patriarchal injustices. The theme for this year's Human Rights Day, which is the year of Charlotte Maxeke, promoting human rights in the age of COVID-19, is befitting for her statue, particularly in a year where we are commemorating her 150 years of her birth. Because of her selfless contribution in our liberation struggle, in 1994, we ushered in a democratic dispensation, and it enshrined human rights that Umama Charlotte Maxeke fought for in the constitution of our country. These human rights include the rights of equal protection and benefit from the law, the right to human dignity, the right to freedom of movement and resistance and residence, which stipulates that our people are free from reside anywhere in South Africa, the right to use the language and to participate in the cultural life of their choice, and more importantly, the right to life. Since 1994, our government has made significant strides to entrench these fundamental human rights in our society. However, in recent times, our nation has descended into a society that abuses women and children. This is the human right This is the human rights violation of the highest order in the post-apartheid South Africa, for which I'm certain Mam Charlotte Maxeke is looking down on us in disbelief. Kwiveke ezimbini ezidlulileyo kwenzeke isehlo esihambisa umzimba sokubulawa kwabantwana bekhaya lakwaSingqotho, uEmihle obeneminyaka eyi-15 noAnakho obeneminyaka eyi-11 kwenye yeelali zaseNgqusho. Amapolisa aqhuba uphando kwaye umrhanelwa aza kumfumana kungekudala. Loo nto ayizobuyisa ubomi bezintsana kodwa izokhusela iintsana ezininzi kwisiyeleko esenze elisikizi. This incident and many others like it make it difficult for us to celebrate Human Rights Day freely, because the rights of women and children are violated on a daily basis in our country. We must use this Human Rights Day commemoration to recommit ourselves to defeat the scourge of violence against women and children in our country. We have said enough words on this matter. We must now see action in measures to prevent crimes against women and children and punishment for perpetrators of crimes against women and children in our courts. The rights of women and children are human rights, and thus they must be promoted and protected. With those few words, I welcome you to the Human Rights Day commemoration in our province. Enkosi.
President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, the Minister, Mr. Nathi Mthethwa. As we celebrate this very important month of our young democracy, it is somewhat deeply fulfilling that we do in the name of our stalwart and hero, Mayor Charlotte Maxeke. This year's Human Rights Month is celebrated under the theme, the Year of Charlotte Maxeke, promoting human rights in the age of COVID-19. Our society today is socially different to the one in which Mayor Maxeke lived in. I say socially different, but not structurally different. The edifice of apartheid still remains heavily entrenched in our everyday experiences, either through colonial names in our communities or by our own behaviors as citizens. In spite of this being the 27th anniversary of our democracy, many of us know well that living amongst us is still the remnants of apartheid. In spite of our proclamation and commitment to Ubuntu, xenophobia and tribalism still find expression through our actions as citizens. Our humanity, which binds us together, is increasingly becoming an invisible threat. In our democracy, there are still a few rogue elements hell-bent on undermining the struggles of Mayor Maxeke and her heroic generation. They do this through acts of genocide, acts of domestic violence, acts of child abuse, and other inhuman acts. They go as far as affecting the life of women in terms of patriarchy in our society. We have to change that for the better in honor of Mayor Maxeke. The impact of COVID-19 on human rights takes place in the 25th anniversary of the country's constitution, a landmark timeline of an important document that has inspired and transformed the lives of millions of South African citizens. Over the past 26 years, much progress has been achieved, resulting in a number of progressive improvements in people's lives. The Constitution is a document that really values human dignity, equality, non-racialism, non-sexism, and it has established a fertile ground for entrenching fundamental human rights across the entire social spectrum of our country. It obliges government to set people free from poverty and ensure that all citizens live their lives as they choose. The pandemic has brought into sharp focus the complexities of entrenching a human rights-based society in our communities. For instance, the perceived decline in reportage of gender-based violence in our communities has in reality brought spot on the nature of gender-based violence. Statistics really points to the fact that more often than not, the perpetrators of gender-based violence are individuals who are known to the victims and survivors. Ladies and gentlemen, as a country, we're favored by progressiveness. It is no coincidence that International Women's Day falls within our Human Rights Month. The roots of International Women's Day originates from the Socialist Parties of America's organizing a 1908 garment workers' strike, which inspired an International Socialist Women's Conference in 1909, where a group of German socialists, including Clara Zetkin, Louis Zitz, Paul Tide, and Kate Duncan, proposed an International Women's Day. I have no doubt that even the work of our own Charlotte Maxeke should be viewed within this paradigm. Her work as an activist, without fail, placed South Africa on the international stage. As we celebrate Human Rights Day in 2021, let every citizen be concerned about entrenched human rights in the country through a gendered lens. Let each of us say, as long as there are still those whose rights are violated and undermined, the struggle continues. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, including Mayor Charlotte Maxeke, and in her memory, let us recommit ourselves to be activists for human rights for all. I thank you.
President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Mr. Ronald Lamula, Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, Mr. Nathi Mthethwa, Premier of the Eastern Cape Province, Mr. Oscar Mabuyane, fellow South Africans, I greet you all on behalf of the South African Human Rights Commission. Today is Human Rights Day, a day on which the nation reflects on and takes stock of the progress achieved in our efforts to promote, develop, and protect human rights in our country. On this day, we also commemorate the 1960 Sharpeville massacre, in which more than 60 unarmed Black people were shot and killed by the apartheid police during a protest march against the oppressive and undignified past laws. The South African Human Rights Commission recently marked its 25th anniversary as an important milestone towards a culture of human rights. The Commission is today a leading champion of human rights. It has both national and international recognition as one of the leading national human rights institutions in Africa and the world. It played a leading role in the establishment of the network of African human rights institutions and the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. The 25 years in protecting, promoting, and monitoring the attainment of human rights have taken many types of interventions. The Commission has been involved in strategic litigation at all levels of courts, including the Constitutional Court, in ensuring that human rights are upheld by the state, the private entities, and ordinary persons alike. The Commission has reached out to communities in various ways, through personal contact, through digital platforms and the media, to spread awareness of rights and how these rights can be exercised. Corruption is one of the greatest threats to our democratic order. It is high time that the government walks the talk and takes stiffer action to deal with corruption head-on. The Commission calls upon our leaders and all public servants to follow the example of Charlotte Maxeke and bring back ethical leadership that is centered on serving the people of our nation. We call upon the government to take decisive steps against unethical and corrupt leaders and public servants. A lot still needs to be done in order to fulfill constitutional rights and change the lived experiences of millions of South Africans. The constitutions, laws, and policies provide the government and society in general with tools to meet these challenges. It is incumbent upon the state to partner with all social role players in our society to address the triple threat of poverty, unemployment, and inequality in an effort to create a better socio-economic order, which in turn will lead to a better life for all. During Human Rights Month, the Commission will be hosting and participating in numerous activities in all provinces with other relevant stakeholders and strategic partners, and joins the government in the commemoration of National Human Rights Day. The Commission further calls upon everyone to do their part so as to ensure the realization and enjoyment of rights by all. Thank you.
Our Constitution has come a long way, and we are celebrating 25 years of its existence this year. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past.
Honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land.
Respect those who have worked to build and develop our country. And believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in diversity.
We, therefore, through our freely elected representatives,
adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic so as to
heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights.
Lay the foundation for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law.
Improve the quality of life for all citizens and free the potential of each person,
and build a united and democratic South Africa able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations.
Thina bantu baseMzantsi Afrika siyaziqonda intswelabulungisa ezexesha elidlulileyo. Sibothulela umnqwazi abo baye beva ubunzima ukuze kubekho ubulungisa nenkululeko ezweni lethu.
Re tlotla ba hlokofaditsweng ka lebaka la toka le tokoloho naheng ya rona.
Sihlonipha labo abasebenzela ukwakha nokuthuthukisa izwe lethu. Begodu bakholwa bona iSouth Africa ingeyabo boke abahlala kiyo. Sibambene ngokwahlukahlukana kwethu.
Rona ka jalo, ka baemedi ba re ba itlhophetseng ka kgololesego, re amogela molaotheo o jaaka molaomogolo wa rephaboliki. Re tlo fedisa diphapano mme ra bopa setšhaba seo se theilego godimo ga dikelo tša demokrasi, toka le ditokelo motheo setšhabeng.
Rive na mathomele maswa. Rive na mathomele a demokrasi ane muvhuso u ḓo kona u thetshelesa zwililo, vhupfiwa kana lutamo lwa vhadzulapo. Ri dovhe hafhu ri vhe ro tsireledzea u lingana mulayoni.
Lewensgehalte van alle burgers te verhoog en die potensiaal van elke mens.
Ai khomaneni, hi ve nyandza yin'we, hi aka Afrika-Dzonga leyinene.
Neyekwakha iNingizimu Afrika lebumbene neyentsandvo yelinyenti, futhi lekwati kutsatsa indzawo yayo lefanelekile njengelive lelitibusako emindenini yemave latibusako.
we celebrate and commemorate the 150th anniversary of the struggle icon and trailblazer, Ms. Charlotte Maxeke, by adhering to the rules and regulations of COVID-19.
May God protect our people.
Nkosi sikeleli Afrika, Murena buluka setšhaba sa heso. God save South Africa. God bless South Africa. Muzimu patucheta Africa. Wosi katekisa Africa Dzonga.
As we chant freedom, we have rights. Amandla ngawethu. Siyawazi na amalungelo ethu. Do we know if and how these rights can be translated into our everyday lives? Do we know who to go to should we feel these rights are being violated? Who do you reach out to as a shoulder to cry on, or a word of advice on what your rights are? ngithi ndikubuze kwakhona, uyawazi na amalungelo akho?
Human rights for children are rights for education. It's the right for a child to be in school, to be educated, to learn, to grow. It's the right to help, the right to have access to basic health services like immunization, like nutritional support when a child needs it. Rights for children are rights to be protected from violence, from exploitation, from neglect. Very fundamental, basic things that you would want your child to have when he's born. It's the right to be registered at birth so that you have an identity, so that you're recognized, you're counted in a country, so that when policies are developed by a country, they know how many children, where they are, what their needs are. This is what children's rights are, and this is what an organization such as UNICEF works for.
Often when we think about human rights, we think about them in a very legalistic thing. We think about the Bill of Rights, and that as the standard for what rights any individual has.
I think, for one, Gizotti, specifically as a transgender woman in South Africa, celebrated 27 years of human rights. I think we need to revisit what human rights are.
Human rights to me means freedom to everything. And 27 years later, we find that in the space of persons with disabilities, we still have challenges. For example, we have challenges of transportation, we have challenges of communication, we have challenges of being discriminated, and we have challenges, it's a lot of challenges that we face day by day. But even if though we fight, it seems like our voice is not being heard. For example, me as a woman, I face lots of challenges in business because I'm a woman. I face challenges because I'm Black. I face challenges because I'm a woman again who is trying to penetrate this industry and who's trying to fight for our rights.
For me, human rights are about unleashing the ability, the potential, and the agency of every human being so that every person can decide for themselves on their own terms how to live their lives, and they can do it in a way that is not only good for themselves, but is also not harmful to others. So human rights are about, I need the ability to live my life, to achieve, to excel, to make decisions on my own terms. But I also need to do that cognizant of the fact that I'm part of a community of other humans and I mustn't do harm to them. So for me, that's the most simple way that I think of human rights. It's those rights and those things that afford us the ability to live life to the best of our abilities on our own terms and in relation to others.
So I feel like in South Africa, our rights are not being considered. For example, as a woman, for me, I'm not given a fair opportunity. As a woman, I'm not given equal right. For example, it's a taboo for a woman who's disabled to be pregnant. The community will still say this and that, but it's my right to be pregnant, and it's my right to live in the community as well.
Human rights need to speak to those that lives in South Africa, to everybody. That includes us transgender people, because constantly I think we are excluded. And we are constantly being told by society that, we do not belong. And for me, be it I'm going to a police station, I'm going to healthcare service space, to any other government spaces, I need to be afforded with the services that are provided in that space, because that's my human right.
I think for me, as Msadi wa Mutomuntu in South Africa today, my human rights speaks to me being able to walk the streets without fear. It means being able to go into spaces without second-guessing my presence, without being anxious, without being edgy, without feeling like anything can happen to me. More than anything, a sense of having the rights as Mutu is having freedom to express yourself in anyhow, in any way, without feeling like there's an element of censorship, especially from a creative space. I want to be able to say the truth and my truth. I want to be able to speak my mind. I want to walk into spaces and be vocal and have opinions and be heard and be seen and be felt holistically without being made to feel small, without being outcasted, without being muted, and if anything, without losing my life.
Umama uCharlotte Makgomo Maxeke uzalwa nge-7 ka-April 1871 walandulela eli nge-16 ka-October 1939. This remarkable woman was a South African religious leader, social and political activist, umama nentshatsheli yamalungelo oluntu. Umama uCharlotte was a trailblazer long before the term was even coined. Engowokuqala owasetyhini uNtsundu ophuma nesidanga kwidyunivesithi yase-Wilberforce University ise-Ohio ngo-1901. Uphuma ephethe i-BSc, making her the first Black African woman to graduate from an American university. Loo nto ithetha ukubana usimele ngokwenene silizwekazi iAfrika. A revolutionist, pioneer, nentshatsheli for human rights, she was this and so much more. Namhlanje xa siqaphela siqwalasela i-Human Rights Day ku-2021, we honor the legacy kamama uCharlotte. Sikhumbule apho ebenyathele khona, elungiselela into yokubana nathi we can enjoy our human rights. Charlotte Manya Maxeke was born to John Kgope Manya and Anne Manyi on the 7th of April in 1871 in Fort Beaufort in the Eastern Cape. Her father had grown up without access to education and always encouraged his children to be educated so they could live better lives. Her father's stories of the lack of literacy in his village first planted the seed of ambition in Mama Charlotte's mind. And throughout her life, she remained driven and determined not only to improve things for herself, but also to return to the mountains of her father's village and to teach her people. Umama Charlotte was a groundbreaking activist who championed human rights and broke boundaries during a time that Black people, and in particular Black women, were denied their access to the most basic human rights. She grasped every opportunity presented to her and accomplished many notable firsts during her lifetime, some of which include being the first Black South African woman to achieve a BSc degree in 1901, the first woman to participate in the King's Court under the King Sabata Dalindebo of Abatembu, establishing a school in Everton with her husband in 1908, the Wilberforce Institute, being the only woman who attended and contributed to the first African National Congress conference in 1912. She was the co-initiator, organizer, and the first president of the Bantu Women's League founded in 1918, which we now know as the ANC Women's League. South Africa became a better place because of women like Umama Charlotte, and today we honor and celebrate her legacy and the significant stride she took in making history recognize the human rights of all South Africans. COVID-19 may be a pandemic that has shaken the world and our country. Kodwa, long before COVID-19, Mzansi was grappling against many pandemics that have violated women, young girls, and sexual minorities. These pandemics have divided a nation, stripped many of their dignity, and created a society of fear and injustice. But we know South Africa. She is a conqueror, and we want to continue to explore the opportunities available to us to make positive strides against these.
Yes, the recent report on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on children in South Africa tells us that while children were in lockdown, they were witness to violence in the home. They were deprived from the usual interaction that they have with their peers, with children in school, which is a way to let go of, sometimes some of the stress that they encounter at home. And so we quite concerned actually about the longer term impact on mental health of children that the lockdown has had on children during the pandemic.
The Bill of Rights is only as good as people make it. So it doesn't matter that we have an amazing Bill of Rights, but we live in a society of awful human beings. And we've seen it all over the world where you see injustice. Often the problem isn't whether or not you have the Bill of Rights or people know the Bill of Rights. Often it's whether we have decent people who believe in dignity, who esteem others and think of other people as fully human themselves. And that's where we lack. That's where the Bill of Rights and those kind of things fall apart. Essentially, we wouldn't need a Bill of Rights if we regarded people as equals, if we regarded everybody the way we saw ourselves. And said, because you are human and I recognize you as being fully human, the things I want for myself are the things I want for you. The things that the dignity and the sense of humanity and the sense of self that I have, I want that for you too. And unfortunately, we've come into kind of a culture, a set of cultural norms that says, humans are inherently selfish. And humans are looking out for themselves and they're looking out for people who are like them. And we've normalized inequality. We've normalized this kind of contestation amongst people. And we've said, oh no, that's just the way human beings are. But the truth is, if we start to change the definition of what it means to be human and what it means to live in society with one another, then we'll change those kinds of notions of competitiveness because they're not inherent. And we see it in different parts of society. You can see friend groups that emerge and evolve out of solidarity. We see solidarity in so many forms of life that isn't forced, that's very much organic. So in as much as human beings are selfish or human beings are competitive, human beings are also kind. They're also people who seek solidarity. They're also in need of contact. And I mean, COVID has taught us that. COVID has taught us that human beings are actually very dependent on each other and actually want to be in relationship with each other. So I think we need to redefine what we mean by what it means to be human and bring back into that a sense of our humanity is interlinked, our sense of self is interlinked, who we are is interlinked. And if I just want for others what I have for myself, then we can make the Bill of Rights successful. Then we can recognize everybody's rights and we can enact it without even having to go with the letter of the law. We can just go with what it means to be human as a starting point.
With us in 2021 to celebrate Human Rights Day, I'm not even going to lie. I think we need to challenge the system. We need to change the system. We need to understand why are we celebrating Human Rights Day, Are we benefiting from that, especially as the LGBTI community? With us in COVID, a lot of people are not working. People are going back home. Those that are privileged enough to be able to go to bohlala emakhaya. Laba bangakwazi bazohambe bayestradini because bazokhishwa la behlala khona. Government has not assisted them in any way. I'm yet to meet trans people that have said who are self-employed, who have said they've received any assistance from the government. I remember when the government announced ukuthi kuzobane relief fund. I don't think any other I don't know of any trans person that have received that money. I myself have never received it, So I think we have the power now, to challenge the government, to challenge the system. If we're able to speak out on social media, which means there are so much more that we can actually do with that voice.
Charlotte was indeed a champion and groundbreaking agent of her time, a change agent and force to be reckoned with. Kodwa masisondeze kunyaka esiphila kuwo, u-2021, apho ilizwe jikelele lahlaselwa intsholongwane, one that has drawn the lines clearly between the haves and the have-nots, where access to basic human rights has been denied to many South Africans who just by virtue of either the color of their skins, sexual orientation, gender, and economic status have had great difficulty accessing their right to life and human dignity. Mzansi, maske sithethe, sixoxe ngakumbi access and exclusion to human rights.
So, but the problem that we still face is the problem like discrimination, exclusion, and all the other things that I've mentioned. However, we are trying to educate people about persons with disabilities. We are trying to also penetrate, and we are trying to also bridge the gap between the able people and us. For example, we also want one day to be on TV. We also want one day to be on Parliament. We also want one day to be big CEOs and represent persons with disabilities. We also want to be part of the people who are making decisions about us, because nothing about us without us, right? So the message that I'm saying is, give us a chance, give us a fair opportunity, include us in everything, most especially in decisions that also affect us. So give us an opportunity that will prove you wrong. So we are not only born to be people and we die. We want to penetrate, we want to represent the world, we want to represent South Africa. So that is why we are saying we are bridging the gap between able people and disabled people so that everyone can meet together and we can be a team. Because after all, we are one blood, we are one family, and then we push the spirit of Ubuntu amongst us.
You know, I lost a friend of mine last year, Ulisiba, may her soul rest in peace. And my heart sank when I had to go visit her all the time, and she was in a male ward. And she was a trans woman, you know. And for me, I think what bothered me even more is that one of the nurses knew her personally. And this person, you know what, was actually advocating. No, guys, we can't have Ulisiba as a transgender woman in a male ward. I myself, I remember before I was afforded an opportunity to go and be in a better space, I once went to a public hospital. The doctor then came through and when last ngiya my periods. So no, I'm my periods, I'm a transgender woman. I'd say, oh, you are a man. And she left me there, you know. And I'm just trying to think, should anything then have happened to me, who would have, you know, accounted for that had happened?
The LGBTIQ plus community have done us all as human beings a service in the last 20 years. And they've done what I think even the feminist movements have not been able to do, in saying that people are human first. And regardless of the social expectations you put on them, they are first human. And that was the thing that we were denying LGBTQI communities for a long time. We were denying them identity, humanity, the ability to just identify yourself. At minimum, women have always had the right to say, I am a woman, to claim who they are. We have denied an entire group of people across humanity just the ability to say who they are without fear, without retribution, without exclusion. And they have challenged us. That community, more than any other, have challenged us when it comes to things like inclusion, when it comes to things like humanity. I remember when the LGBTIQ community were fighting for equal rights in terms of same-sex marriage, and particularly the debate that was happening in the US, I think probably more than in other contexts, about how heterosexual people were claiming marriage and saying marriage is only for them. And I remember just thinking to myself, how selfish do you need to be that you are going to deny somebody the right to choose companionship and to choose love and to choose the ability to love who they're going to love on their own terms? Because we don't have to agree with one another. And that's always the thing that I've said about this. We don't have to agree with one another, but we have to respect each other's ability to live the life you want to live.
sizobatubula ngembala sizoba.
It was 1960, on the 21st of March, when this took place. It took them approximately 2 minutes to kill 69 and injured 180 people in Sharpeville. The same incident occurred in Youth in 1985, same day and month, when they killed 35 and wounded 27 people. Because of this. But in 1994, after 1994 elections, the 21st of March was declared a Human Rights Day due to these incidents.
On the 9th of November in 1952, 1,500 residents of Duncan Village, Zanetlanganiso, Ebantu Square, the residents gathered in support of the 1952 Defiance campaign. The apartheid police were monitoring the meeting. Ukuphela kwayo, they dispersed the crowd, but the crowd retaliated. They fought for their right of freedom to congregate. A battle ensued between the residents and the police, and lives were lost. Among them, Dr. Quinlan, also known as Sister Aiden. On the 11th of August in 1985, kwalapho at Duncan Village, it was again the scene of a violent crime, following the funeral of Victoria Mxenge, kwilali yaseGayi, of the returning mourners. 19 people died and 138 were injured. Bangalomini. On the 28th of March 2008, the Duncan Village Massacre Memorial was unveiled in honor of the victims of the 1985 massacre. With this performance by Eastern Cape-born and celebrated singer and songwriter Uzahara, we pay tribute to the unsung heroes who lost their lives fighting for human rights all those years ago in the Eastern Cape.
Mm-hmm.
Sithanda ubulela kakhulu ubukho benu namhlanje. Niye naxhulumana nathi kumakhasi wethu onxibelelwano ngosebenzisa ii-hashtags zethu zanamhlanje. Sinethemba into yokubana nifundile kakhulu ngamalungelo enu. We want to uphold them, we want to observe them, and we want to protect them for every South African. Masithembe into yokubana from this point on, we'll continue to build on this amazing foundation that has been set before us. Sibulela kubo bonke abantu abaze phambili ngolwazi lwabo. Sithi kamnandi.